Vanakkam friends, I hope you're doing great and finding this series useful to learn and understand more about India's system of governance. So let us take 10 more questions to continue to do that. As always, keep your copy of the Constitution of India handy for reference. For best learning, I recommend you pause the video after every question is displayed, mark your own answer, and maximum 1 minute you should take, and if need be then open your book quickly to refer and only then proceed to listen. This will improve your understanding, memory as well as revision power. You can also get all these questions at one place as a quiz and in PDF on the Telegram channel. The link is in the description of this video. You may join the Telegram channel for more quizzes and relevant information in times to come. I do hope you are also following the parallel silent quiz running through the pictures on the slides on the right hand side. I trust it will give you some more learning. Alright, so let us take the first question for today, and that is, which of the following is false in a situation where the Prime Minister is a member of Rajya Sabha? Okay, so Prime Minister could be from any house. It's the situation when the PM is the member of Rajya Sabha. So, of course, PM will not be the leader of the house in Lok Sabha because only the member could be there. So, in such a situation, one of the ministers will be, the PM will decide, nominate them to be the leader of the house. So, when Dr. Manmohan Singh, for example, was the Prime Minister, initial days for very long, Pranab Mukherjee, who was the finance minister, used to be the leader of the house. Then he became president, of course. So, yes, this is, right. It's correct. So, but the question is asking which is false. So, this is actually a wrong answer. Second statement says PM will not be able to vote against a motion of no confidence against the council. Now, the no confidence motion is brought only in the Lok Sabha, and since the PM is not a member of Lok Sabha, PM will not be able to vote. So, this is actually a correct statement and hence a wrong answer for this question. Okay. Third one says PM will not be able to speak on the budget in the Lok Sabha. Will not be able to speak. We all know that all ministers, and PM is also a minister, the lead minister, all ministers have a right to speak in both the houses. In fact, when questions are asked, they have to go to the other house also to answer. So this is actually not a correct statement, and hence the correct answer for this question that we have. In case you didn't recognize this gentleman already, that's Edwin Lutyens. Next question we have. Zonal councils are in news. Which of the following statements are correct about the zonal councils? Okay, let's see. These were set up by the States Reorganization Act 1956. That is absolutely correct. These were the idea of the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. He promoted it by saying that it will promote the spirit of cooperative working in India. And as per the Act, there are 5 zonal councils. Absolutely correct. Okay, so never be confused with, I know sometimes people do get confused with the Northeastern Council. The Northeastern Council is not a zonal council as such. It is created under a separate act of the Northeastern Council Act of 1971. Under the States Reorganization Act, zonal councils are created. Okay, and there are 5. That is, you have the North, South, East, West, and the Central. All states and UTs are the members here. However, you should know that Andaman, Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep, these two are not members of any of the zonal councils, though they are invitees on the Southern Zonal Council. So, who represents these states? Of course, the Union Home Minister is the chairperson. So this is also correct. There are the member states in each council, in each zone. There are 3 people from that. The chief minister and 2 other ministers are there. From the UTs, it will be the it will be your administrators there. So there are 3 people essentially, and the CMs, the chief ministers by rotation, are also the vice chairperson of the respective councils. Also, each state has 2 advisors, one of whom is the chief secretary of that state. So anyway, that's about zonal councils. So let's go to the next question, and that is, which of the following can be said to be a difference between the federal nature of constitutions of India and the USA? Okay, let's see if it is a difference or not. First, residuary powers being explicitly vested with the Union in the Constitution of India. First thing, we know it is vested with the Union Second thing, is it in the Constitution of India? Yes, we know Article 248 very clearly says that, as well as our the first list, the union list under 7th schedule, the last item is that only. So yes, this is actually correct statement. Then second one, single constitution for union as well as the states. Yes, we have a single constitution. US has separate constitutions, so definitely this is also a difference. Hence, the correct answer should be C, both of these. So, not a difficult question, I believe, and yeah, 60% of you got it right. So, let's see the next question, and that is in which of the following cases concurrence of both houses is required to give it in effect. Okay, so any one house cannot do it alone. Okay, removal of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, even without knowing any provisions, I'm sure one basic essential idea we know that the removal etc. is done in the similar way as a judge of Supreme Court, and a judge of Supreme Court can be removed only when the resolution is passed in both the houses. So this is definitely the case where you need both the houses. Proclamation of national emergency, absolutely the approval can be given only by both the houses. So as soon as the second house comes in, we know there is a time period of 1 month within which it should be done. Okay, then Constitutional Amendment Act, yes, Article 368 very clearly defines that it can be done only by passing the bill in both houses sitting separately. So it has to be done in both the houses. There is no joint sitting also. In any case, both houses concurrence is necessary. So this is also a correct answer. All right, so that again I believe should not have been that difficult. Okay. So the next question we have is under which condition Union Public Service Commission may serve the needs of a state. Now this is actually a provision of Constitution of India, but let us forget that for a moment. A good deserving candidate of civil service in India should be smart enough to think logically and derive the most appropriate answer to. However, that does not that does require a lot of application of mind. So see, being a federal nation, a body of the union, right? A body of the union cannot just start doing work or interfere in the affairs of the state. However, in the spirit of cooperation, it is not forbidden either. But remember, cooperation means both sides, the union and the states, both have to, kind of come together. So even this much simple understanding of how in principle a federation shall work will tell you that the answer should be B, because this is the only place where you see both sides are coming together, right? So it was not actually that difficult. The options were also created. I mean, I did that with the objective to to at least help you think at times. Of course, this is not, sadly, it is not the case, because less than half of you actually got this answer correct. Anyway, I hope you are getting the bigger point I'm making about preparation of exam. And trust me, it is rarely about knowing the mucked up provision. Of course, this is a provision of Article 315 of the Constitution, but it's okay. You don't have to know these articles, etc. But now that I've told you, go and read it, please, quickly. All right. So the next question we have now is which of the following statements are correct regarding service voters in India? And look at the performance here. Anyway, so who is a service voter? Service voter is a voter having service qualification. Okay, as simple as that. Under the Representation of People's Act of 1950. Service qualification means the person should be a member of the armed forces or a person employed under the government of India but posted out of India. Okay, so yes, the first option is correct for us because it talks about a person who is an employee of the government and is posted outside India. So yes, they definitely qualify as a service voter. Then service voters may exercise their suffrage either through postal ballot or through proxy. Yes, this is also correct. And nowadays, the postal ballot is not entirely postal. After the coming of the electronically transmitted postal ballot system, ETPPS, on which we will have a question in the videos to come as well. So after this, it's not totally postal as such. It's partly postal. So now this is also where you need to know another term that is used, that is a classified service voter. Okay, classified service voter. So this is a service voter who opted for the proxy method of voting. You can learn about service voters through a short video made by the Election Commission, the link for which is on your screen right now. Okay, so do that. And third option says service voter is not issued an elector voter identity card, that is the EPIC card. So yes, I mean, you can understand why do they need it for. I mean, they are not going to vote themselves. So this is correct, it is not issued to them. So actually all these are correct statements. Do watch the video I told you. Next we have, which of the following can be said to be the first milestone towards a fully responsible government in India? I see a lot of people get confused, but you know, if you understand the question, this is actually a statement which every decent book of modern history or even polity will write. If you understand what is responsible government, I mean, this is actually a very straightforward question. You know, the answer is your Government of India Act 1919. It was before this act itself, a few years before it, the British government had for the first time declared that the objective was to gradually introduce a responsible government in India. As you know, this act of 1919, it brought the concept of diarchy in the provinces, okay, where the transferred subjects were to be administered by the governor on the advice of the ministers, to be responsible to the legislative, the council, that is the provincial legislature of those days. So yes, that was indeed the first seed of creating a responsible government in India. Nothing extraordinary as such in this question. Partly factual, but if you have got some thoughts clear in your head of modern history, you should be able to answer that. Okay, so oh well, performance doesn't look that great. There is something seriously missing. Anyway, you can fill the loopholes yourself. Next question we have is, Supreme Court of India is a court of record. Why is it called a court of record? I'm sure you know basic principles, that a court of record essentially has two parts to it. One, that the judgments it gives, they are you know, kept as a record, and they are admissible as an evidence in other courts also, and also it has the power to punish for its contempt. Okay, and Supreme Court and High Court both are the courts of record, by the way. When you know, all of these are correct statements, there is nothing extraordinary. And this gentleman here, Satish Gujral, brother of former Prime Minister of India, Mr. Indra Kumar Gujral, was known for his quest for an unique Indian artistic identity, free of European influences. You know, he came to be known as one of the pioneers of modernism in post-independent India, and he passed away just you know, last month, March 2020. So next question, which of the following is not a type of municipality under the provisions of the Constitution of India? Now see again, the performance on the Telegram channel, where you know, you 1/3 of you roughly got this wrong. And that tells me that the basic provisions have not been read by those who make mistakes. You know, I just cooked this question randomly to keep reminding you that everything begins with first reading the basic provisions, at least once. So if you see the very second article under part 9A, that is, you know, municipalities in the Constitution of India, it writes clearly that there shall be constituted in every state a Nagar Panchayat for the transitional areas, a municipal council for the small urban areas, and a municipal corporation for the larger urban areas. These are the three types. Now, the names can slightly change here and there, but this is what is provided in the Constitution of India. There is nothing called Mahanagar Council. So, I mean, the answer is clear, but see, at least the basic provisions you should read once. So today, just go and read at least first 2, 3, 4 articles of, you know, either panchayats or municipal bodies, you know. Okay, so please do that. So we come to the last question for this video. that is, which of the following proposals being undertaken in the House and the required majority to approve or pass the proposal have been matched correctly. So which of these acts, the 4 points, which of these actions of the legislature, the majority has been written correctly. That's all it says. Okay, so first one says amending an act of parliament, majority of the members present and voting, absolutely correct. In fact, every ordinary legislation is passed like this only. Then a motion of no confidence, majority of the total membership of the House. No, it is not the total membership of the House. It is essentially again very much like the first one, the members present and voting. So this is actually not correct. Third one says motion for the impeachment of president. Not less than 2/3 of the members present and voting, blah, 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 blah. This is actually wrong. I'm sure you know from Article 61 of the Constitution that this is the toughest majority required for anything, and this is the only such thing in our Constitution. 2/3 of the total membership of the House. Okay, it doesn't matter how many are present or not and how many are voting. It needs to be 2/3 of the total strength. Okay, so this is wrong. Then motion to remove the Speaker of Lok Sabha. I see a lot of confusion is there among people here and there because they don't read the provisions very carefully. Never be confused in this. Presiding officer of any House, when the motion to remove them goes in the House, the majority required is of all the then members of the House. Okay, so this is exactly what is also called, the effective majority. Okay, all the vacancies are removed from this. So never be confused. 1 and 4 are correct. And this gentleman here, Laurie Baker, he is regarded as the conscience keeper of Indian architecture. I mean, he was. And sometimes even called as the Gandhi of Indian architecture. In fact, UPSC has already asked a question on precisely the same in the mains 1 year, that why is Laurie Baker considered the conscience keeper of Indian architecture? And the answer lies in his work in areas of sustainable and energy efficient architecture, and especially the vernacular architecture in India. So read more and do attempt writing an answer on this. Okay, and that should also give you an idea that UPSC syllabus knows no boundaries really. Okay, so those were the 10 questions for this video. Now to close it, I want to leave you with a thought. Many times in life, all aspects of life actually, we are required to take very strong decisions, tough decisions, decisions that may cause resentment in people around us, or it may hurt them emotionally. These decisions may be necessary. However, they cause a lot of agony in us while we ponder over the decisions. And there may be a prolonged duration of time when we feel we are doubtful of next steps, this path or that path, yes or no, go or no go, whatever. In such times, I found this short Sanskrit phrase to be, very useful, at least for the immediate decision making. Anugachatu pravah. That is, to go with the flow. That is, do not interrupt the flow. Of course, if the motivation is strong enough to break or change the flow, then do it. But don't waste time in indecision, and accept as well as respect the flow. That is what I've come to understand. Anyway, I hope it helps you in your life situations too. So till next time.